Skeletons of the Marital Closet by Tang. Chapter 6. Gale woke up from his dream. She looked at him sleepily and asked, What's wrong? She had done nothing. Did she disturb him by talking in her sleep? Was she sleepwalking? Shawn's face became more and more ugly. Gale whimpered and said, I told you I shouldn't sleep here. Sorry, I'll leave. She quickly bent down, picked up the pillow and quilt, and walked out. However, she had no idea her hair was a little messy because she had just woken up, looking rather attractive. Shawn pulled her into his arms before she could take more than 2 steps. Are you trying to seduce me with a coquettish look? I'll give you what you want. Shawn leaned in and kissed her deeply. Gale was frightened and unconsciously opened her mouth slightly. He mocked. Oh, so you want more? Gale regained her senses and she hurriedly closed his lips. He squeezed her chin so hard that she gasped in pain, and her lips opened as if she was inviting him. How could she kiss Shawn? They are enemies. Even if you stand in front of me naked, I won't want you. Shawn bit her lips till he drew blood. Gale, you are just my plaything. Dirty. The blood dripped from the corner of her lips and landed on the back of his hand. Gale had no idea why he went crazy. She could only stand with her head bowed, with no right to resist. Shawn looked at her deeply and was upset. Get lost. Before she could take more than 2 steps out of the door, she heard Shawn say, Not that far. Gale slept outside the bedroom door. She dared not fall asleep because she was afraid that she would provoke Shawn again. So she stayed half awake until dawn. At about 8 o'clock, Gale heard footsteps at the door and immediately got up and stood up properly. The door opened and Shawn gave her a glance. Morning, Wood. Mr. Wood, she hurriedly greeted. Shawn was very upset when she looked refreshed, as though she had a good night's rest. He had not managed to sleep last night. He said coldly, A lowly person is worthy of a lowly life. You are only worthy of sleeping at the door. Gale asked tentatively, Then I'll sleep here in the future? Certainly. She breathed a long sigh of relief. Sleeping outside is more comfortable than sleeping on the bed with him. Seeing her relaxed expression, Shawn became even angrier. Follow me to the company. You should not be lazing around at home, he ordered. Yes. After breakfast, Shawn sat on a Rolls Royce and drove away. Gale walked to the Wood group. It was past 10 o'clock in the morning by the time she arrived at the office. Although everyone was busy, it was strangely quiet. Gale asked in a low voice, Fiona, is there anything I can do to help? If Shawn knew that she was idle, he would definitely lose his temper, so she should take the initiative to find some work to do. In the whole company, only Fiona knew her identity. He has not given any orders for the time being, Fiona said and glanced at the office. President Wood seems to have eaten gunpowder today and has already scolded the 3 directors. I don't think he slept well. Why don't you buy a cup of black coffee and bring it in? Okay. Gale passed a pharmacy when she bought coffee. The clerk was packaging some pills, and the faint medicinal smell wafted out. Gale stood in front of the counter. Hello, can I please have some medicine? Hold on. 10 minutes later, Gale returned to the president's office. She knocked on the door, and Shawn's irritable voice came out. Come in. There were also 2 company executives in the office, with their heads drooping after being scolded. There are broken cups on the ground. Gale squatted down and silently packed up the broken pieces of porcelain. You came out with this shitty marketing plan after 3 months? Shawn threw the documents on the ground. I will give you 5 more days. If you can't finish it, you will voluntarily resign. Yes, President Wood. Shawn leaned back on the chair and rested his head on his arm. The more he thought about it, the more upset he became. He raised his hand and swept everything off the table. Gale had just collected the broken pieces when suddenly a heavy folder dropped on her hand, cutting her hand. Ah! Hearing the voice, Shawn was stunned, and then he remembered that Gale had just come in. He stood up, only to see her squatting on the ground. Gale hid her injured hand behind her and said, "I'm here to bring you coffee." Shawn frowned deeply. Gale took out another packet from her pocket and said, "And this. What is this?" He picked it up and looked at it and said with disgust, "It's ugly." Gale said, "It's a sachet I made. It contains a few herbs to help sleep and calm the nerves. You should be able to sleep well if you put it by your pillow." Shawn threw it directly into the trash. "It's unnecessary." In his opinion, Gale was mocking him for his insomnia last night. She was getting to him. That was not a good sign. Gale sighed. Her father had taught her how to make the sachet, and it had worked really well. She hoped that Shawn could sleep well, so that his temper would also improve and everyone would not be worried. She gathered her courage and tried again. "You can try it for your sleep. Go out." Her kindness was disregarded. After Gale left, Shawn looked at the few drops of bright red blood on the carpet. She was injured. His eyes moved to the sachet in the trash can again. After a few seconds, Shawn turned around and made a phone call. "Have you found out who the woman was that night?" "No." He commanded forcefully, "Hurry up. Find her at all costs." "Yes, Mr. Wood. We have a few suspects and we are going to continue our investigation." Shawn hung up the phone. He had to find that woman as soon as possible. Otherwise, something will happen sooner or later if he keeps Gale by his side. She is a vixen, and she is the best at seducing men. Gale held her palm, walked to a corner where no one was around, and then slowly spread it out. The wound had closed up, and it was no longer bleeding, but it needed to be cleaned up and treated with medicine. Otherwise, it would become inflamed. However, she had no money to buy medicine. The only money left on her was spent on the sachet, but Shawn threw it away without a second thought. She had to find a way to make some money. Gale decided to find a temporary job nearby, which was better than being an idler in the Wood family, which would aggravate Shawn. If Shawn needed her, she could come back any time. Gale wasted no time after making up her mind. Coincidentally, the restaurant opposite was recruiting dishwashers, and the wages were calculated by the hour. She went to the front desk and asked, "Excuse me, I saw that you are hiring." Before she could finish speaking, she heard two voices behind her. "Isn't that the cleaner?" "Oh, isn't this the Honorable Mrs. Wood?" Chapter 7. There was no way out of the situation. Gale looked sideways and saw Paula and Jenny sitting by the window, looking and gasping in unison. She went out immediately as it was not a good idea to stay any longer. However, Jenny had no intentions of letting her go so easily. "Cleaner, wait a minute." Jenny stepped forward and forcibly pulled her to Paula. "Aunt Paula, what did you call her just now?" "Mrs. Wood." "What? She's Shawn's new wife?" Paula nodded. "Yes. When I went to Temperley Hall to deliver some soup to him, I saw her. I can't be wrong." At that time, Shawn had defended her, embarrassing Paula. Paula was narrow-minded and vowed to take revenge one day. "Ah!" Jenny screamed in anger. It could shatter windows. "She's actually that vixen." "But, Jenny, why did you call her a cleaner?" "Because when I saw her, she was cleaning the floor in the office." Paula could not believe it and questioned, "Really?" Jenny recounted what happened and added, "Shawn didn't help her at all." It was not looking good for Gale. She remained calm and shrugged Jenny's hand off. "You have mistaken me." Jenny said, "Impossible, it's you." You were the lowly cleaner who cleaned my shoes. Miss Jenny, go to the hospital to see an ophthalmologist when you have time. Gale wanted to leave, but Paula stopped her. Okay, Jenny is sorry for what she has done, but I'm your mother-in-law. Why haven't you greeted me when you saw me? Paula, I didn't recognize. Paula gave her a pointed look. This was not her first rodeo. Paula started to piece it together in her head and understood what was going on. So, it turned out that Mrs. Wood was not favored at all. Otherwise, how could she polish Jenny's shoes? Since Paula married into the Wood family, Shawn had not liked her and found all excuses to go against her. So Shawn was putting on a show for her. Paula dragged Gale to sit beside her. Well, since you're here, ugly daughter-in-law has to greet her in-laws. I still have something to do, so I can't accompany you, Paula. What did you call me? Gale replied, Well, my husband calls you that too. Shawn had made her slap herself because she apologized to Paula. She had not forgotten it. It was evident that Shawn hated this stepmother very much. Paula said meanly, How dare you say that? How stupid do you think you are? That's right. You are not allowed to call Shawn your husband. Gale's face turned cold. Look, I'll say it again, I'm leaving. Otherwise, I'll call the police. When she was in the mental hospital, she would make an effort to make herself look untouchable so that others would not dare to bully her. She could implement what she's practiced with Jenny and Paula, and her years of practice told her that this would work. Gale walked out without looking back. Unexpectedly, Paula actually chased after her as soon as she walked out of the restaurant. They grabbed Gale's arms and dragged her to the car. Let go! She shouted to passers-by. Help! Help me! Paula smiled and said, This is my daughter-in-law. She quarreled with my son and ran away. I was about to take her home. The passers-by saw what was happening and looked the other way. Gale could not match their strength, so she was dragged into the car. Paula pinched her hard. Hey, arrogant, I have to teach you a lesson today. Gale said, How dare you? If Shawn found out, he wouldn't let you go. Jenny replied proudly, You think Shawn will offend Paula's family for you, a cleaner? Yes. The car whizzed away. In the Wood Group headquarters conference room, Shawn raised his wrist and glanced at the time after the meeting. Mr. Wood, lunch is ready, Fiona said. He nodded and suddenly remembered something. What about her? I'll contact her now. Fiona was famous for being kind-hearted in the company. Besides, Gale is still Mr. Wood's wife. As long as Mr. Shawn does not specifically instruct her to do so, she will not target Gale and let her rest. Shawn waved his hand deeply. No need. Why was he looking for her? It seemed that he missed her. No, he was looking for her to torture her. Yes, President Wood, Fiona said, but secretly went to look for Gale quickly. After all, if President Wood loses his temper, the entire company will tremble. Fiona searched everywhere but could not find her. After checking the surveillance, she saw that Gale had left the company 3 hours ago. She gulped, bit the bullet, and reported to Shawn. Mr. Wood, She's gone. Missing again? Shawn ate lunch calmly. She wouldn't dare to run. Unless she really wanted her legs broken. Unless she really wanted her parents to die. But your wife has been out of contact for 3 hours. Shawn held the spoon in his hand. What tricks was she playing? Shawn wanted to find Gale, and it was easy. Not long after, he received an email containing a photo of Gale with Paula and Jenny holding her arms. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly. It seemed that they wanted to play with fire. Shawn took a sip of water slowly and ordered, Prepare the car. Yes, Mr. Wood. The Timothy family had a holiday villa in the suburbs. As soon as the car door opened, Gale fell out in embarrassment with her hands tied behind her. Ha 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 ha, you look just like a dog. Jenny looked at her triumphantly and said, Tell me, should I scratch your left cheek first or your right cheek? Gale looked at the slender and sharp knife. Jenny, you have the support of the Timothy family, and you understand that Shawn doesn't care about me. But have you ever thought that I belong to Shawn, and he hates his things being destroyed? Shawn's desire to possess and control was well known in Sea City. What he hated, he wanted to destroy it himself. What he liked, whoever dared look at it, was a crime. Jenny hesitated for a moment. Oh, don't be frightened by her. Paula kept stirring the pot and said, when she's disfigured, Shawn will lose his appetite when he sees her and toss her away. Your chance will come. Jenny nodded and said, yes, only I can marry him. I won't let other women go. Gale suddenly burst out laughing. You! What are you laughing at? Gale replied, laughing at you, stupid. You are being used by Paula. She's getting you to do all her dirty work so she doesn't have to get her hands dirty. Stay out of it. Paula cursed. Shut up. Did I get it spot on? Gale's only way to save herself was to provoke the two of them and delay time. Shawn had a strong desire to control her. He should have discovered that she was gone. She had to wait until the moment he came. Chapter 8. Yeah, Paula, we should do it together. Don't just stand aside and watch, Jenny said. Jenny, I'm already old. Gale immediately interrupted. Look, Paula doesn't want to do anything. As she spoke, she secretly tried to break free of the rope. Jenny also felt that Gale had a point. She handed the knife to Paula and said, So, you cut the left side, I'll cut the right side. Paula agreed. Okay, you make the first cut, and I will hold her down. All right. The two hit it off. Gale's wrists were all red with no luck from breaking loose. Paula came over and grabbed her head. Stay still and it will hurt less. Jenny, come on. This face is really fair and tender. No wonder you can seduce Shawn. I have to make a mess of it today. Jenny approached with a grin. The knife got closer and closer and finally stuck to Gale's cheek. As long as I exert force, your beauty will be gone. Gale swallowed nervously. You are really not afraid of Shawn. He won't touch me with the Timothy family here. With that said, Jenny was about to make her first cut. At this critical moment, a deep and dignified, familiar male voice came from afar. Stop! That voice. Gale was overjoyed and shouted with all her strength. Shawn, save me! The sound of rubber burning around the ground rang out. Before the car stopped, Shawn had already jumped off. He walked fast. The hem of his suit was raised high and his eyes were full of anger. Timothy family? What do you think they are? Shawn raised his thin lips and threatened, Tomorrow I can make the entire Timothy family disappear from Sea City. Shawn kicked Jenny away without even looking at her. He went straight to Gale and picked her up. Are you hurt? She shook her head. No, almost, but I was not. Shawn asked, What are you running around for? You can't find a spot to sit in the entire Wood group? She kept quiet, not wanting to tell him she was looking for a job, and bumped into Paula and Jenny. Shawn, why are you here? Paula smiled and said, I'm playing with my daughter-in-law. Shawn raised his brows and replied, Play? Yeah. He picked up the knife from the ground and threw it at Paula's feet. Let's play with your face next. What? Cut it. Shawn. Jenny stomped her feet and said, Why are you defending this woman? Because she's my wife. Shawn's eyes were colder than a knife's. If I don't protect her, who do you expect me to protect? Do you expect me to protect you instead? Jenny looked at Gale with jealousy. Gale could not express how she really felt on the inside. The reason why Shawn was so angry was that the only person who could bully and humiliate her was him. No matter how much he hated her and wanted to torture her, he won't let others do it. He had to do it himself. Shawn sounded like he really cared about her, but she knew it was not true. Just as she was deep in thought, Shawn picked her up in his arms. Gale exclaimed and hooked her arms around his neck subconsciously. Realizing that this gesture was too intimate, she quickly let go. Shawn said coldly with an indifferent expression, "You should be glad she wasn't injured. Jenny, I'll punish you on behalf of your family. Go back home and think about what you have done for a month. You are grounded." "Paula," he said to Paula, "don't even think about getting a cent of your living expenses this year." For Paula, this was the most painful punishment. After she married Shawn's father, she lived a luxurious life. Even if Shawn's father died, she could receive an exorbitant living expense from the family fund every month. Shawn cut off her 1 year's funding all of a sudden. She was so used to spending money. How can she survive? "No, that's the money your dad gave me." 2 years. "Shawn you. 3 years. Shawn always kept to his word. Paula and Jenny's life was in ruins. After returning to Temperley Hall, the housekeeper saw Gale's disheveled appearance and asked, "Miss Gale, you are—" "It's nothing. It looks bad, but I'm not hurt." Shawn sat on the sofa and tugged his tie. "You're not hurt. What's about the palm of your hand?" Gale was taken aback. It turned out that he had discovered it long ago. "Apart from causing me trouble, what else can you do?" Shawn looked at her with deep eyes. "I punished Paula and Jenny for you. Are you proud?" She quickly waved her hand. "No." He sneered and said, "Gale, no one can touch your face. If it is to be scratched, it will only be done by me in person." Shawn looked at the fruit knife on the coffee table. Gale shivered a little late. "What are you waiting for? You can't read the room?" She had to hand him the fruit knife with both hands and defended in a low voice. "I did nothing wrong today." "It's your fault for running around." Gale bit her lower lip and lowered her gaze. Shawn is her god, and she can only obey his orders. He traced the cold blade on Gale's cheek. "Gale, look. Once you leave me, there are so many people who mess with you." Shawn gently patted her face with the tip of a knife. "I'm the only one who can torture you." She closed her eyes tightly, not knowing when Shawn would raise the knife in his hand. Probably because she had been oppressed for too long, Gale actually refuted him. "Anyone who bullies me, I can resist, I can fight back. However, I can't resist you. Because this is what you owe me." "No, I never owed you, nor did my family owe you." Gale cried silently in her heart. The knife pressed down little by little, and with a little more force it could cut through the skin. "Ring." The landline next to her suddenly rang rapidly. Shawn picked up the receiver and answered. "Hello, Grandpa." Grandfather Wood shouted loudly, "Come over immediately, now." "What's up?" "Also, bring your newlywed wife." The old man hung up the phone. Shawn looked at Gale. It was amusing that she was clearly panicked, yet was trying her best to remain calm. "You're lucky." Shawn raised her chin with the tip of the knife. "I'll leave this face untouched for now, lest you scare my grandfather with blood." "Grandfather?" "Pack up and follow me." Shawn crossed his legs. "I will give you 5 minutes." Gale staggered up the stairs, changed her clothes, and tied her hair as fast as she could. The old house of the Wood family. Compared with the luxurious castle style of Temperley Hall, the old house had a calm and atmospheric courtyard with a view of mountains and rivers. As soon as she entered the living room, Paula pointed at Gale and screamed, "Yes, Grandfather Wood, she is here. She is Dr. Peter's daughter. Shawn actually married her." Chapter 9. Everyone's expression changed in an instant. "Shawn, you are simply unfilial." Grandfather Wood trembled with anger as he yelled, "Her father killed your father and you still—" Paula hurriedly comforted him. "Grandpa, calm down. Your body can't handle this. Alas, I came to you as soon as I got the news, and I had to discuss with you what to do about this." Divorce immediately," Paula said hypocritically. "Shawn, I really don't want to be a drag. I mean, it's fine if you don't notify us of such a big event, but how can you marry the enemy's daughter? How can Paula just take Shawn's punishment of 3 years without living expenses without a fight?" She could not find anything to take Shawn down, so she sent investigators to find out more about Gale. Unexpectedly, this investigation revealed Gale's secret identity. Paula did not hesitate to tell the old man to pressure Shawn. She still wanted to add fuel to the fire, but Shawn swept over with a sharp look. She shut up unwillingly. Shawn replied, "That's right, she is indeed Dr. Warm's daughter, but how can the fault of the previous generation be imposed on the next generation?" Gale gave him a surprised look. This person was too good at lying. Obviously, he was actually angry at her. Grandfather Wood tapped the cane heavily and yelled, "I think you're confused. Shawn, don't forget, you have an arranged marriage arranged by your father. I only marry who I want to marry." "You..." Grandfather Wood clutched his heart and struggled to catch his breath. Gale stood next to Shawn from beginning to end. She knew she had to blend into the background. It was not her turn to speak unless... Shawn motioned her to speak. To be honest, she could not understand why Shawn wanted to marry her. Gale thought so in her heart and murmured involuntarily, "Why don't you marry Jenny?" As soon as the words came out, she regretted it. Isn't this courting death? "Are you deaf? I just said I'm marrying someone I like." "Oh, you... like me?" Can she understand that? After 2 years of torture, does he have feelings for her? Shawn pursed her lips coldly and said, "Gale, you look down on yourself too much. I'm afraid you will fall in love with me." Gale lowered her head and twisted her fingers. "It's inevitable that two people have been together for a long time will..." Shawn raised his chin deeply and said, "Huh, do you think I'll touch you? Keep dreaming." Even if all the women in the world were dead, even if she were naked and standing in front of him, he would not take a second look. Gale's head lowered. It seemed that she was too ashamed, but in fact, a slyness flashed in her eyes. Gale said that on purpose to make Shawn not want to touch a single strand of her hair in the future, so she would be safe. When confronting Shawn head-on, she had no choice but to outsmart him. Shawn said in a low and powerful voice, "Grandpa, there is no need for you to worry about it. Just enjoy your retirement. I will bring the Wood family to its peak." "Are you saying you will not divorce her?" "Divorce is all up to me." "You vixen." Seeing Shawn's resolute attitude, Grandfather Wood's anger moved toward Gale. "You killed my son, and now my grandson is seduced by you. Our Wood family must owe you in the past life." Paula deliberately fanned the flames. "Grandpa, if you have something to say, just say it. Don't use violence." "I have to kill this fox of a woman." Grandfather Wood held his cane and waved it toward Gale. If he hit her, she would definitely be bruised for several days. A cane came down on Gale. Gale blinked her eyes within a blink of an eye. She suddenly screamed and hid behind Shawn. "Ah, my dear, save me." Shawn was speechless. She can act. "My dear, I'm so scared." She pressed herself against his back and said pitifully, "You will be sad if I had gotten hurt, right?" Grandfather Wood waved his cane again and again. "Look, there it is. That's how she seduced you." Gale kept holding Shawn in front of her, and the old man tried several times but could not beat her. In the end, he simply smacked Shawn's back with a cane. "All you do is go for beautiful girls. How useless." Shawn was hit. Gale had not seen this coming. Her face turned pale as if she had lost. "She's finished." Shawn gave her a cold glance. Thanks a lot, Gale. The phone rang suddenly. Shawn looked deeply at the caller ID and answered, "What's the matter?" "Mr. Wood, I found the woman who broke into your room that night." "Where?" "Sea City Mental Hospital." "How could it be?" "That's where Gale stayed for the last 2 years." Shawn held the phone and looked sideways at Gale. His eyes were too sharp and fierce, and Gale tilted his head to avoid his burning gaze. Shawn turned around and walked out, not forgetting to grab Gale's wrist. "Let's go." There was a cracking sound from behind, mixed with Grandfather Wood's curses. Shawn jumped into the car, and Gale was about to sit in when he stepped on the gas pedal and flew away. Well? She was not deserving of riding in his car and had to walk. Her own legs were always the most reliable form of transport. The Wood family home was close to the suburbs with very little traffic. It was late at night and Gale was a little flustered. However, she soon discovered a business opportunity: waste recycling. It was a high-end villa area. The trash cans were full of empty mineral water bottles and cardboard boxes. She had an idea to collect them and take them to the junk station. At least they could be sold for dozens of dollars. Gale rolled up her sleeves and started to work. She collected trash all the way home. When she was about to arrive at Temperley Hall, she found a waste recycling shop nearby and sold it for some money. She went home happily and found that Shawn had not returned. Strange. Where was he? The rumbling sound of the sports car cut through the night sky and finally stopped in the mental hospital. "Shawn!" Shawn stepped down with long legs and yelled, "Where is he?" "In the dean's office." He kicked the door open and looked inside with burning eyes. There was a fat old man in his 50s kneeling on the ground, his nose and face bruised from being beaten. The dean stood in awe. A young woman stood beside the dean with bright makeup, looking like a cheesy, foxy internet celebrity. Shawn said lightly, "It's her? Are you sure?" The woman that night was soft and lovely, and she was very beautiful without makeup, gentle, and clearly a virgin. The woman in front of him was different from what he had imagined. Could it be wrong? It seemed that Gale's temperament was more in line with that woman. The subordinate replied, "Yes, Mr. Wood. She is the dean's daughter, Susan Fanning." Chapter 10. "How did you find out what happened?" The subordinate replied, "Mr. Wood, this is what happened. This old man took a fancy to Miss Fanning at the dinner party, and he insisted that she sleep with him one night. Otherwise, the dean would be unable to leave. The dean was forced to send Miss Fanning his way. Miss Fanning would rather die than go through that. She escaped and inadvertently broke into your room while she was being chased." Shawn narrowed his eyes slightly and walked in. At this moment, the old man on the ground shouted, "Who are you? You dare to tie me up. Do you know who I am?" "Oh?" Shawn raised his eyebrows deeply and asked, "Who are you? Do you know the Wood family, the #1 wealthy family in Sea City?" "Heard of them." The old man was triumphant and said, "I'm one of the cousins of the Wood family, so be afraid. Let me go." "Is that so?" Shawn's leather shoes kicked him casually. "I'm the president of Wood Group and the head of the Wood family. Why haven't I heard of you?" The old man's eyes widened, looking at him in disbelief. "How dare you bring down the Wood family's name by showing off your power?" As he spoke, Shawn pressed his feet hard and kicked the man hard till he flew and hit the wall. The old man spat a mouthful of blood as he fell. He retracted his feet gracefully and slowly asked, "Your name is Susan?" "Yes, yes." Susan was shocked and admired his powerful aura. "Mr. Wood, are you looking for me?" He was such a catch. She must find a way not to let this opportunity go. Shawn nodded lightly and said, "Well, after that night I've been looking for you." Susan's expression was dazed for a moment. How could such a rich and powerful man look for her? She has never seen him in real life. She had only seen the heroic appearance of President Wood in the news and newspapers. Shawn asked after noticing Susan's blank expression. "Don't you remember?" "Yes, she does remember." Before Susan could answer, the dean next to her immediately answered, "Mr. Wood, my daughter is just too excited. I didn't expect you to come to her." Susan tugged his sleeve. "Dad, this..." The dean said loudly, "Oh, don't hide it. I know that you ran away that night and was robbed of your innocence by another strange man. I just never brought it up. However, Mr. Wood is here to pick you up." A smart person like the dean had already guessed what had happened. He knew who he sent was not his daughter Susan, but Gale Warm. Gale ran away from the old man, but when she came back the next day, there were bruises on her neck. Given what had happened, the dean pieced it together, and he knew that Gale Warm had slept with President Wood. Susan was also clever. Seeing her father's constant winking, she immediately cooperated. "Yes, it's too embarrassing for a girl. That's why I left without saying goodbye. I said I would marry you." Susan's eyes lit up as being able to stay by Shawn's side was a great blessing to her. Marry her? This was simply a blessing from the heavens. If she could marry into the Wood family, she would not have to work so hard, making short videos and trying to be an internet celebrity. She would instantly become the rich wife of a top wealthy family, having fun all day. "I thought you were just joking." Susan began her act. "After all, if my father can send me to the old man's bed, which other man can I trust?" She feigned tears and started to cry. The dean also acted on and feigned his misery. "Susie, I can't do anything either. I was the happiest when I heard you escaped. I thought no matter what, I'll protect you." The father-daughter duo was acting perfectly in sync. "I always do what I say." Shawn pursed his lips. "So I'm here to pick you up. Susan, are you willing to come with me?" Susan was waiting for his words, nodding eagerly. Yes. Actually, I've been thinking of you too." Shawn frowned subconsciously. How could her reaction be so different from that night? At that time, she resisted and was afraid and left without saying a word, but now she was so proactive. "Mr. Wood, you are my knight in shining armor." Susan took his arm and said, "With you here, my father and I will no longer have to be afraid of this old man." Shawn put away his thoughts and hummed. Now that she had been found, he wanted to keep the promise. He will marry Susan, but it will only take some time. "Let's go." Shawn turned around. "Well, Mr. Wood, Susie and I have a few things to say." The dean rubbed his arms and said, "Look, all right." As soon as Shawn left, the dean held Susan's hand excitedly. "It's our lucky day." "Dad, tell me everything I need to know, or I will be exposed in front of President Wood." The dean whispered to Susan's ear, told her everything he knew, and warned her carefully. "Understood," Susan smiled. "Having this information is enough. Dad, I'm going to find President Wood." She happily went to admire Shawn, sitting on a sports car worth tens of millions. Susan could not help but take out her mobile phone and take various selfies, each of which had to be photographed with the car logo on the steering wheel. Shawn sent her to a property on the riverside, 300 square meters with a view of the most prosperous downtown of Sea City. Shawn handed her the key and said, "You live here and a servant will come tomorrow. Just tell me what you need." Susan took the key and was so happy that she had stumbled into this. "Mr. Wood, our fate is intertwined, and I will definitely serve you well in the future." She rushed up to hug him, but was pushed away by Shawn. He was obsessed with personal space and hygiene and was not used to interacting with people. "Mr. Wood, it's getting late. You should rest first. But I want to sleep with you." Susan winked. Her clothes slipped from her shoulders, trying to seduce him. Let's relive that night. Men usually take the bait. She had to sleep with Shawn as soon as possible to feel at ease, since the woman that night was not her. Shawn furrowed his brows. If it weren't for the time and place, he would doubt whether Susan Fanning was the woman he was looking for. Maybe it's been a long time since they had met, and she was too happy to be reserved. Shawn said, "It's not the time yet. I'll go first." He left without hesitation. Back at Temperley Hall, Gale had fallen asleep. She was still sleeping at the door of the master bedroom. From a distance, he could only see her long black hair. Shawn walked over and looked at her condescendingly. Gale slept soundly. She turned over lazily, and the collar of her pajamas suddenly opened a little, revealing her snow-white skin. Also, as his eyes gazed down to her chest, his throat tightened. How could he develop feelings for Gale so easily? If Susan was the one he was looking for, how could he not feel anything?